Welcome to Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery, a conversation held at the intersection of substance abuse, mental health, and everyday living. Your hosts, Marc Regala and Justin Wolf, bring both professional expertise and personal understanding to the table. So welcome to the conversation. Let's dive in.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode here of Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. Tonight we have a special guest with us, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Marc Regala. Marc, how you doing this wonderful evening?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing great, man. I'm excited. We are joined this evening by Kenny Lambert, just a dad from Akron. So we are honored to have you with us tonight, sir. So how are you doing?
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very excited.
Awesome. So this is the part where Marc likes to really give us an update on kind of where we're at in the seasons and what holidays are quickly approaching. So Marc, where are we?
I want you to sing a Christmas carol. Can you sing a Christmas? Kenny, how about you sing a Christmas carol? Can you sing?
No, I don't sing, man.
Oh, it's the last
Back
podcast
to the day,
before.
Marc's got beautiful pipes, and so he's very modest. So Marc really likes to have other people showcase. I mean, it's just the guy he is. Really trying to lift others up. So thank you, Marc, for this golden opportunity.
When I was in active addiction, I did think I sounded a lot like Elvis. Then I got sober, and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Not even close.
But I'm sure your dance moves were impeccable and on point, needless to say.
I got some dance moves still, yeah.
He knows what the audience wants.
Oh, so. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
In all seriousness, it's the last podcast before Christmas. We want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday Season, Happy New Year. Hard to believe 2024 is pretty much gone, okay? Looking forward to 2025, looking to do good work in the community. And honestly, that's why I'm very excited to have our guest on tonight, Kenny. You know, because Kenny's got a very interesting story. He's living a life of recovery. He's living a life of service. He's got quite the story that led him down a pretty dark path of addiction. He's going to get into that a little bit. But the thing about it is all the good work that he's doing in the community. You know, so I'm very excited to have him on tonight. He's fresh off of a TED Talks. He actually did a TED Talks. It was recorded on this past Sunday. By the time this podcast posts, it's probably going to be on YouTube. So I definitely suggest check out, Kenny's TED Talks. But Kenny, if you can just kind of give us an update as far as like what was going on in your life, maybe pre-addiction, like what your life looked like as a child, so forth, what it looked like during addiction, how you got sober, and then kind of what your life looks like now. We really would appreciate it, okay?
Yeah, for sure. Most definitely. I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm very excited. This is a cool podcast. I'm psyched for the vibes. So thanks for making me feel welcome. So yeah, born and raised, here in Akron, Ohio. This is where Alcoholics Anonymous was founded, but growing up, born and raised, Christian household, both parents present. I'm a middle child, so I have a younger brother, older sister, and born and raised in church, so church was mandatory every Wednesday and Sunday, every vacation Bible school, Sunday night they had church, that's when they did like the worship and stuff. So that was always mandatory, and school was always, a mandatory. So growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, it's an urban community, so it's a lot of violence, a lot of drugs, a lot of stuff that you wouldn't see in a suburban community, and it was very rare for me. I was the only kid out of all my friends that I grew up with, that had a present dad, and as a kid, I took that for granted. I was always, because I got in trouble, my dad was there to set the boundaries, and enforce the rules and the punishment. And a lot of my friends just got the slap on the wrist from their mom and sent back outside. So as a kid, I was envious, because I was like, wow, like I get in trouble, and I have repercussions for my actions. So growing up, I was a young skateboarder kid, played baseball. And from a very early age, looking back, those were my mental obsessions. When I was at school, all I could mentally obsess about was skateboarding or baseball. And I loved those. Those were both my favorite sports. And so I continued to do those, alongside going to church and stuff like that. And I'd say about, very, very good upbringing. We didn't have much. We had a roof over our head. My dad worked multiple jobs and to provide, and that was pretty much about it. We had a lot of hand-me-down stuff for every holiday, Christmas and stuff. We had to pray. My parents told us, "Hey, we don't have money for holidays. We better pray. We better pray that a miracle happens or someone provides." And as a kid, I was those kid going to the toy giveaways, the coat drives and stuff. And it was just it's a humbling experience, looking back now. But that's still how the culture in the neighborhood is, that I still live in. It's probably worse than what it was when I was a kid. So growing up, my parents always instilled that love was one of the most important things in the household. That's one thing that they could provide that didn't cost money. They could love us and show us how to love others. And I remember from an early age, my mom told me, to never judge somebody by what they look like on the outside, no matter what their skin color is, no matter what clothes they wear, because the person that you want to see someone for is on the inside. And as a kid, that didn't really make a lot of sense. But growing up now, it's like, wow, that makes so much sense, especially in the society that we live in. So it's where people are just easy and quick to judge someone who has crazy hair, someone who has tattoos, even judging people that are living on the street. It's like those people came from somewhere at some point, and I never dreamed or thought that I would end up being one of those people. So yeah, that's like the upbringing, upbringing, very, very cool. I remember when I was 12 years old, my mom had told me that my grandpa, which is her dad, was an alcoholic and that he had been sober at the time for 28 years. And I remember I didn't know what alcoholic was. I was very naive growing up. I didn't know what alcohol or drugs or any of that was. But I remember crying and saying, how is grandpa labeled as something that he's no longer? Because he was labeled as an alcoholic, but he wasn't in active alcoholism. So it didn't make sense to me, And then another funny story in 8th grade, one of my buddies in home ec class asked me if I remembered so-and-so. And I said, yeah, I remember. He's like, yeah, he lost a bunch of weight. He's been doing crystal meth. And I said, is she hot? Because I thought crystal meth was a female. That's how naive I was growing up in shelter. So I thought Crystal was a woman that this guy was doing to lose a bunch of weight, So I'm like, and he's like, what are you talking about? So like, that's just a very, in a nutshell, what my childhood was like, home by the street lights on, just very basic, I guess, like Christian household, versus like all my friends, running the streets, stealing cars, doing all that other stuff. And that's, eventually that's what I ended up getting into around like 16, running the streets and a little more freedom. So I would say that's like a quick, version of like the pre-alcoholic drug addict state.
Did something happen in your life that kind of led you down that path? I mean, did you quit baseball? Did you have a baseball injury? Was there any type of traumatic, or was it just a rebellion against that Christian life that possibly led you down that path? I mean, have you been able to figure that out?
Yeah, so I think it was more or less, like the fear and like the void, like to fill the void of wanting to fit in, to feel accepted, So 1st through 8th grade, I went to a suburban white, all white school, suburban hillbillies. And then my parents had open enrolled us out to that school because they didn't want us to grow up in that lifestyle in the community of where they could afford to live. So we went to this school about 30 minutes away, 20 minutes away. And, it was very, very normal, I guess, for school, football and community and bonfires and stuff like that. Right. So then for high school, my parents gave me the option to go to Kenmore, which is where I live in Akron, Kenmore neighborhood. And it's the complete opposite, So it's like when I chose to go to Kenmore High School, is because I wanted to see all my friends and meet new people. And, so I went to Kenmore and it was a complete culture shock. There was fights every single day, people bringing guns to school, people selling drugs. And I loved it. I thrived off that because I could do absolutely anything, and it was like the most minimal thing that they would worry about, because it was like the worst thing I was doing was like nothing compared to what else was going on around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I fit in, you know, because I was like this little blonde haired, long skateboarder blonde hair kid that was like a skateboarder. I could shoot hoops and play basketball, so I felt accepted, you know, because everyone's like, oh, like we want this little white boy on our team to come hoop because he can hoop, you know. And I always had the cool shoes, you know, because I had skateboard shoes, and those were unfamiliar to the culture and the lifestyle the school that I was in, you know. So it's like you have cool shoes, so I felt like I was accepted, the young skateboarder kid. And then you know, ninth grade, it became, I sat at like every different lunch table, you know, so I sat over here with the preps, and then I would go over here with like the goth emo nerds, and then I would go over here with like the gang table, you know, and I felt accepted and I fit in at all these different places, you know. I was like a chameleon. And then it became, everyone found out that I never drank or never smoked, you know, so it became the whole school in that cafeteria was like, it's mission, get Kenny drunk. So, you know, so we planned it all out. I went to a party, and I remember I drank some wine coolers, and everyone at the party was dancing, having a good time. I'm on the ground with the worst stomach ache. And what my brain tells me is that everyone else has a stomach ache. They're just dancing and having a good time with a belly ache, you know? And I'm like, this is not fun, you know, this is not enjoyable. I don't know how anyone could enjoy it, you know. So I go back to school, share my experience, and the solution was I just drank the wrong stuff, you know. So then, you know, then there's becomes options of alcohol, you know, so it's liquor and beer and this and that. So we planned out a second drunk, and it was with one of my skateboarder homies, you know. And his dad was like a professional alcoholic. Had the full bar in the basement. You know, it was like shiny, had the gloss on the wood, and just full of bottles of liquor. So we planned out drinking gin and tonic. We planned it out. We went back to his dad's house in like a nicer area of Akron, Fairlawn, and it's like I don't know. It's just like more high end, like nice cars, you know, shopping malls, all that type of stuff. So it's like a different area, you know. And we went to the house, and I start chugging tonic water, and my buddy's like, "What are you doing?" You know, and I'm like, "I'm trying to get drunk." And they're like, "No, man, like you're supposed to mix it," you know. So I didn't know. I was super naive. I was like 15 at the time. And so we ended up drinking, and I love Bombay. That's what we were drinking, gin.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the smell of it. I love the taste of it. I didn't feel sick, and I felt the effects immediately. Then we ventured off through the night. It was about like 1 a.m. We have an encounter with the police. That's my first ever encounter with the cops, and I'm full of fear, you know, because I'm like, my parents are Christian. My parents are going to church tomorrow. Like, this is not good. I thought I was going to jail, you know. So the cops ended up being cool. They take us back to the house, and my buddy's dad was like out of town, so like we end up going back, and the cops say, if there's any adults here, you know, on the premises, we'll let you guys go. And the college neighbor kids were next door, and they come outside, and they end up vouching for us. But then we had to go to a party at their house. They had a huge party going on, and yeah, so like that was my first real experience drinking. And my buddy ended up blacking out and passing out, you know. So me and my other friend, we carried him back to his house. And when we get there, I have him by the arms and he has him by the feet, and we start swinging him. We throw him over the couch. He goes through the coffee table, and his dad is at home at this point. You know, it's probably 3 a.m, and his dad's in a blackout. So his dad comes downstairs and he starts beating the life out of his kid, punching him, bouncing his head off the floor, like full on like parental on child violence. And I'd never seen that to the extent of like boxing his face in. Wow. And the only thing that I remember is the only thought that I can remember is I'm next. Like this dude's about to beat us up next.
Yeah.
So we run upstairs, and his dad comes in and throws the house phone and says, "You have to call for a ride home. You're not staying here." And I look at my friend and I say, "I can't call my parents because they're going to church tomorrow." And he looks at me and says, "Well, I can't call mine because I'm a foster kid." And looking back, you know, I realized like no matter how bad I think I have it, or it may seem in the moment for myself, someone else always has it worse. So we came to the conclusion, I ended up calling my parents, you know, we called my dad. And from that point, from 16 all the way to 27, it became my MO. Anytime, any consequence, I blamed someone else. I blamed everyone else for my actions. So I called my dad and I said, hey, you know, his dad forgot we were spending the night. He came home drunk. He kicked us out, not taking any accountability for myself, you know,
right.
And the actions that we did. And my dad comes and picks us up, and he knew, you know, like he knew something was wrong. He knew that we were drunk. And my dad's very naive, you know, he's never drank, never smoked. But I think he just knew, you know, like, okay, there's something that's off. So from there, you know, I loved it. I loved that feeling. And then it was almost like, you know, like when you commit something that you know you're not supposed to do and you get away with it. And then the alcohol on top of it, you know. So I started partying and drinking. Really, like it became like I dropped out of high school at 10th grade and just started hanging out with all older skateboarder kids. You know, I'm 16. I'm hanging out with dudes that are 30 because they have a car. They're better skateboarders, so I can learn how to skate better from them. And we're traveling all over Ohio, all over West Virginia, PA, and just skating everywhere, you know. So I like threw my baseball career away and stuff like that because I thought like summer's here forever. You know, I can just do whatever I want. And yeah, you know, so for the longest time, I truly believed that being an alcoholic was cool. You know, I took pride in that. I would tell everyone, you know, I'm that blackout drinker falling over the floor everywhere, go to parties, breaking people's TVs, you know, destroying the house and thinking like, this is cool, this is fun, you know. And I thought people liked it, but people really hated it, you know.
Right.
And yeah, you know, so like then, you know, I got my first DUI when I was like, it was like 17 or 18. And I started doing a lot of benzos. So benzos and alcohol, that was my MO for the longest time. And yeah, you know, so from there, 2011 rolls around and I wanted to kick the cycle. I wanted to just get clean. I just didn't know, you know, like I didn't know like I had addiction or anything about rehab or none of that. I didn't know what withdrawals were, you know. I'd wake up withdrawing from alcohol and benzos, and just how I grew up was, you know, like if you wake up and you feel like that, you just drink. You know, when you wake up and drink, then it goes away. The hangover goes away.
Right.
So that's what I did for 5 years, man. Just drink every single day, not thinking that it was a problem or anything, you know. And so I go out to California to try to get sober. You know, I'm just like, this is the last hoorah. I'm gonna move out here and just not drink anymore or do drugs. And I had a whole bunch of homies out there, you know. So I move out there, and day 3, Venice Beach, I have a seizure from alcohol and benzo withdrawal, and it killed me, you know. Yeah, so it killed me for 4 minutes, on and off. End up in the ambulance, and I come to, and I have, you know, these the stickers and the wires all over me and stuff, and they're like, hey man, do you know where you're at? And I'm like, yeah, Akron, Ohio. And they're like, no. And they're like, do you know what year it is? And I'm like, yeah, 2009. And then I pass back out, you know, and then I wake up at the hospital. All my buddies come running in, and they're like, yeah, we thought you were dead. And I'm like, no, I'm not dead. Like, let's get out of here, you know? And so I dip out, you know, and continued to, you know, I tried to drink and fill all these, you know, to get to everything to go away, and it was just wasn't working. You know, I had the worst anxiety. I felt like someone was pouring boiling hot water over my head, like 24/7. You know, and it was crazy. You know, like when I leave the hospital, I'm withdrawing from benzos and alcohol. I end up at a party in Los Angeles, in North Hollywood, and Chanel West Coast is there, and all these other, you know, celebrities and stuff, and they're dancing, and I'm just like full of anxiety, just standing. I couldn't move, and I felt like my life was gonna end because that's how miserable and anxious I was. Um, yeah,
Hey,
so you
man.
know, then I come, yeah, it was bad.
Like as you're telling me this, and you're sharing this with us all, man. I just appreciate you kind of being like so open about like what your experience was like, because I'm just like thinking in my head, like the way you were brought up, like your family values, right? That they're kind of like instilling in you. And then this alternate lifestyle you're kind of leading over here. Like, what was that kind of battle like for you internally when that was going on, dude?
Yeah, so I think like for me, like the church thing was like always growing up, I never really liked church because I couldn't understand how everyone was so happy.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like my understanding of church as a kid was like you learn these Bible verses, you read this, you sing these songs, and life's supposed to be great. Because I didn't
Simple lesson,
understand.
man.
Yeah. I didn't understand I was missing the relationship with God.
Yeah.
You know, so like as a kid, because I was so naive, I would pray and ask God, like, God, please give me a new bike.
Right.
You know, God, you know, please make this happen. You know, these things that are like, you know, it's not like God's gonna be like, oh yeah, like I'm just gonna put a brand new car in your driveway. You know,
Right.
God's gonna give you an opportunity, you know, to work and put in the steps and to make it happen. If that's his plan, you know. But it's like I didn't understand. I didn't have that relationship, so I always had that void, full of anxiety, full of fear. Um, yeah, man. So it's just like, and I knew that I wasn't doing the right thing, you know. But the only thing that made it seem right was to continue to do it, so I didn't have to think about it or feel guilty.
Yeah.
So
And that's why the cycle continues, right? Because like I could just kind of speak on myself, where it's like, hey, like I don't like the way I'm showing up or the what I'm putting out here, so I got a hell of a solution to kind of get away from like the problem of being me and all these choices that I'm making, right? And I think that's where like you're talking about, like you threw like baseball, right? Kind of like turning and walking away from that, and that was one of your mental obsessions early on. Because like I totally get that. Because like for me, like that was the thing. It's like obsessing, fixating on playing on like multiple like travel like AAU teams like simultaneously. So it was like full throttle. You're in it, and when you don't have that, you choose to like walk away from that. That leaves a huge void where you're kind of like, and I just kind of share my experience. Like you're kind of forced to look at yourself and say like, hey, without this now, who am I? And do I like that person? And like for me, the answer was like, no, I don't. So, like that was a heavy thing to kind of sit with. So what was that experience like for you, man?
Yeah, so I feel like during the baseball, you know, like that was one of the places that I felt part of, you know, because like I was on a team and it was all Kenmore, like my like neighborhood boys right here, and like my neighborhood is like the dumpiest dump of Akron, you know, so it's like when people say like Kenmore, like in Akron, they're like Kenmore, and they're like, oh, don't go there, you know, like you're gonna get shot or you're gonna smoke meth. That's the stigma of the neighborhood, you know. So it's like the team that we had though in baseball is like from 14 to 16. We won 3 state championships back to back, so we're the best team in the whole entire state of Ohio. You know, we're blowing teams out. State championship finals was like 25-5, and when we'd go to these games, they're an alliance, you know, so it's like a more populated culture, like you know, kind of like a nicer area. You know, they have a whole baseball, and we'd go to these games, and the parents at the games would talk crap to us, like from the other team, like yeah, you guys smoke meth, you know, and like we're like what? We're like 15, you know. But we had this like brotherhood and bond, you know. So it's like kind of when that there was a time too, like the last year of baseball. I remember all my friends' moms were like, they knew I was like starting to be like venture off and like hang out with other people and do things, you know. And it was like, Kenny's a bad kid. Don't hang out with Kenny, you know. And like that hurt because I knew like my intentions and my motives as like how I was raised was like, I'm not a bad person, you know. Like I'll give you whatever. I'll give you the shirt off my back. I'll look out for you. Like I'll pray with you. Like you know, I'm a nice kid. But the things that I were doing, I was like trying to hide. You know, I was like started selling weed and like smoking weed, and I became like, you know, I would see. It was crazy, man. Every time I'd go to like do these things, I'd like one of my homies' parents from baseball would like drive by, you know, and I'm like doing stuff I'm not supposed to, and I'm like, dang. I'm like, maybe they don't even know. They knew.
Yeah.
So that was just more fuel to the fire to like keep going, you know. And I'm like, well, and I always believe like anytime that started happening, I'm like, well, it's too late to change. It's too late to turn back now, you know, like, and that was like in the very early, like, you know, I smoked a joint at the dugout, you know, like, and like, I'm like, oh yeah, it's, the consequences are too bad, you know, these are what people think of me already. Might as well just keep doing it.
Right.
So yeah, it was, looking back, it was like, yeah, man, I don't know. I was just afraid for nothing. I was afraid for all the wrong reasons.
Definitely, man.
So,
well, I mean, your story, I mean, talking about being afraid for the wrong reasons. I mean, that's a very similar story when you talk to other people that have battled with either alcoholism or addiction and then get on the other side and are living a life of recovery. I mean, you hear that over and over and over again. I mean, you just do, and you hear that, in the AA world too. Talking about fears and resentments, things like that. So it's very common. But I can understand being child, young adult, what have you. The pressures that you were under to try to fit in with the crowd. Okay, I mean, I totally understand that. And then, you know, and then the combination of benzos and alcohol, that's such a friggin' lethal combination. I mean, those are the two types of withdrawals that can kill you, man. So that's the first thing I was thinking when you mentioned it. And then you talked about that seizure and being dead for 4 minutes, I mean, that's just a very lethal combination. Yet that's very common, in young adults and people in their early 20s, popping Xanax and drinking, going to the bars and drinking. So how did everything? What was the evolution of the drug usage thing? Because eventually, you smoke some weed, obviously, drinking, then you're popping the benzos, but it led to heroin, correct?
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So that's so like after the benzo, like the seizures, came back to Ohio, and I had this fear that if I did Xanax, I was gonna have a seizure. So I told all my friends, like, I'm not going to do Xanax. I'm just going to drink. And then I got introduced to opiates, And I remember I did a Perk 5, and I was sick. I hated it. I was itchy, puking everywhere. But I'm the type of alcoholic and drug addict, I have to try it twice, No matter how bad my first experiences is, it's like, I got to try it one more time just to make sure. And the second time, I fell in love with it. So for a long time I was doing just Percocet. This is 2014, 2015, when fentanyl was still like a patch,
Yeah.
wasn't like a powder or anything like that. And heroin was still heroin, So at the peak of that, opiates, I was doing 300 milligrams of Percocet a day. Also living the lifestyle of pretend drug dealer, the whole lifestyle of like middleman slash party guru hoster, whatever, just trying to like live life to the fullest. And then I remember, Percocet, the cost started getting high. All my buddies were already like doing heroin, and they're like low key doing it, like not even telling me, And then he's like, "Yeah, man," he's like, "I got something I want you to try, but I want you to try it with me because this is very dangerous." And I'm like, what is it? And when he told me, I'm like, oh man, like I'll never do that. Cause I remember growing up, I'd see people like homies that were like 30 years old on heroin. I'm like, bro, what is wrong with you? You are dirty, like you're doing crazy stuff. You're dumpster diving. And I'm like, bro, you're a dirtbag, And I'm like, oh, I looked up to these people as kids and I'm like, oh, never be like that. Like you're still cool. I just didn't understand it, And sure enough, I tried heroin and fell in love. And it was like from there, nothing else mattered, because like I feel like when you have an opiate addiction or any type of addiction and you're in it for a minute, you become to this point where you're like, nothing matters because it's like you're so hopeless. Life, if you're doing heroin every day, life cannot be very good. At first it might be, because I remember the first time I did heroin, I called all my buddies. I'm like, bro, like, how are you guys withdrawing? Like, I'm still high for like 2 days. I'm like, I thought I was different. That's what I told him. I'm like, I'm different.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna ever withdraw. He's like, oh, you just wait. He's like, you better just stop now, man. And I wish I did, but yeah, I didn't. And then that, like leads to like doing a lot more dirtier stuff, I'm not just stealing from people at parties because I'm drunk and blacked out. I'm stealing from family. Doing stuff I told myself I would never do, hurting the people that love me the most, telling lies, and thinking that I have everyone fooled. That's what I really believed,
Right.
I really believed that like no one knew what was going on. I thought I was just so slick,
Yeah.
My disease was telling me like, they don't know. You're slick. You got this. And I'll be nodding out and be like, oh, I'm just tired, or I smoked weed, you know. And it's obvious and apparent that it's not, you know. But yeah, so like that led me to the first time I ever went to treatment, you know. I remember I thought I was like pissing clean for the probation officer, and I think she just wanted to see like how long I'll lie to her and string it along. And I was about to graduate this program, they told me, you know, and they're like, yeah, you got like 4 weeks left and you're about to graduate. And I'm like, sweet. And I've been doing dope like the last 2 months of it, you know, and I'm drinking these drinks that are making me drop clean. And she goes in there and she's like, yeah, so your graduation's coming up, you know, like, what are your plans? And I'm like, these are my plans, you know, I got all these mastermind plans to sound good, right? And she goes, is there anything else you want to tell me? I'm like, nope. And she flips the screen around and it's like dirty urine, dirty urine, dirty urine, and all these dirties. And I'm like, oh no, that's gotta be fake. Like, I'll pay for retests, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, come on, dude, like, you know, you're not fooling anyone. And then a cop walks in in the probation officer room and arrests me right there, you know? And I'm like, man. So, you know, I told the judge, because they were going to send me to prison. That was, I had like 7 or 8 sanctions. And I'm like, you know, I really thought about it. And I'm like, if you send me to prison, like, yeah, that's cool, whatever. But my fear was that I'd go to prison and I wouldn't learn anything. I'd just come out and pick up right where I left off and be worse. So I told the judge, I said, I'll sit in jail for 6 months and then I'll go to treatment. He couldn't believe it. He was like, you'll sit in jail for 6 months? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right. That was crazy, you know?
Yeah.
That was crazy to say. Yeah, he's like,
yeah.
he was like laughing. He was like, okay, dude, go ahead, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and 2 weeks in, 3 weeks into jail, I'm calling my probation officer, like, yeah, I've been going to meetings. Please let me out, you know? I'm doing the right thing.
Like,
And
what
she's
about
like,
6 months, bro?
yeah. She was like, nope. That's when carfentanil was around, 2016,
Ooh,
2015, 16. So it was like 300 people in Summit County were like dying every week. 300 people a week, overdoses. Like they had built refrigerators outside of funeral homes because there were so many bodies. They had nowhere to put them. And she's like, yep, you're not getting out. So I stayed and I went to treatment. You know, my first treatment facility was a cool experience. You know, it was the best place. There's a place called IBH, and it's a huge treatment facility here. It's known in Akron. A lot of people come here, and but I still wasn't ready. You know, like I was ready to like do it and like get everyone off my back and like feel sober and like feel good was great. You know, but the things that they asked me to do or suggested that I do, I'm like, nah. That's for everyone else. You know, like I know myself and I know my addiction better than you. Like you're a counselor, you don't even know me. How are you gonna tell me what my drug use is like? You know, that's what I believe that, man. It's crazy. So yeah, I was in there for 90 days. I took half the tools that they gave me, and I said, you guys can give the other half to some other people. Maybe they'll need them. And I stayed sober for 2 months out of there. You know, I went to meetings here and there. Still hanging out with people drinking and all that, you know, and it just didn't work out. I wanted to live that lifestyle and still be sober, and that's not possible.
No.
Yeah, it's just not possible. So
No.
I end up relapsing, you know, and everything they said, when I truly believed that night when I relapsed, that I would use that one time and I would go back to meetings tomorrow and nobody would know because I ain't telling nobody. And I was going to prove everyone wrong is what I thought. You know, I truly believe that. I'm like, I'll be that one person I can use and then go back to meetings and then kind of just use whenever I want.
Right.
And that's the case.
It's a great obsession of every alcoholic or drug addict is to control and enjoy their drug or drink of choice.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
How many times have we heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all tried it. You know, after treatment, right? Oh, I'm gonna limit how many pills I take on a daily basis. Or I'm gonna limit how many drinks I'm gonna drink per day. I can do this. I can keep everything in check. I mean, it's repeated story after story after story. And then the other thing that you said about, you know, how everybody, you thought you were doing a good job and you were the last one to know that everybody knew about your addictions.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny that you said that because we just came from a support group And I got asked that question from that lady, Justin. And what did I say in that answer? I said, I was the last one to realize that everybody knew.
Yeah.
I thought I was doing a great job, and nobody knew that I was, dealing with the pills and the drinking and eventually the fentanyl patches and things like that. And everybody knew all along.
Yeah. No, sorry, go ahead, man.
Well, no, I was going to ask you a question. So when you were in jail for those 6 months, did you go through withdrawals cold turkey in jail then? Or did you withdraw prior to actually going to jail?
Oh no, yeah. Like anytime I knew I was going to jail, I would get like as high as possible. It was like the last party. Like hurrah.
Exactly.
And I tell everyone at the dope house, like, I'm going to jail. Like, give me some extra dope for free, Like and so I withdrew in jail from heroin 20 times at least.
God.
And
it's
benzos,
bad enough.
like
It's bad enough, but to friggin' do that in jail, oh my God.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like here, like where I live in Summit County, it's like back then when I was going to jail, there was like the epidemic, of like heroin. So it's like you and 20 other people were withdrawing in one place, and like 30 cells, 20 of them, 20 people in there are withdrawn, puking, and the other 10 are like the dope boys, that got arrested. So, so yeah, man,
so
not fun.
Yeah, so it's a constant cycle, of trying to control and enjoy, or you weren't ready to fully surrender. You didn't want to give up, like you said, maybe the party lifestyle, or maybe some relationships with friends that were drinking and things like that. How long did that last for? I mean, how long was that up and down, last for, where you'd have little stretches of sobriety in and out of treatment? Is it, I mean, and I guess how many times were you in treatment before you ended up getting sober?
Yeah, it's like the first time I ever was like in a facility that I got like was actually like kind of sober in was 2015. And I got sober in 2018. Or it was 2014 going into 2015. So I was there for Christmas and New Year's. But even in there, like, it's like a halfway house. So it's like a legal trap house with K2, and people are in there with every kind of like little shots of liquor for New Year's. Like you could buy liquor, and people are drinking rubbing alcohol and all that type of stuff, So it's like, so I was like, I was in there for 6 months, but like the first real time that I got sober was when I went to IBH, and I was like 100% sober, and yeah, man, I just thought I was different. I didn't understand recovery. It was like the piece I was missing was like, I thought it was everyone telling me what to do, or like telling me how to live my life, not like giving me advice. And like, hey man, if you want a better life, this is what you should do.
No, man. And as you're talking about, like you kind of said it earlier too, where it's like, hey, the goal is like, I just want to get people off my back, and they just need to get off and just kind of leave me alone and let me do my thing, and I'll be good. And I think like that's the flip that ends up happening a lot of times, right? Is where it's like, hey, I realized the people that were on my back had my back that whole time. I just wasn't in a place to kind of hear that or receive that. And I think that's when you kind of like see that transition flip. So I'm wondering for you, man, like when was that time where you actually, like you're starting to talk about it right now, where you're kind of acknowledging, hey, they might actually have some wisdom to kind of share here about what might actually help me.
Yeah. So like what I realized is what led me up to getting sober this time,
Okay.
So like after that relapse, that night that I relapsed, the next morning I got a phone call from the girl I was with, and we had been together on and off for 3 or 4 years, and she says, "Hey, I'm pregnant." And so that's one of the things when I woke up after that relapse was like, I have no idea how to be a dad, And I like the mental obsession was crazy because it was like I knew before I stayed at my buddy's house, and I'm like, I'm just gonna wake up and leave. That was my goal, and I was already obsessing about like buying more, drinking more, and taking more with me.
Yeah.
Before I got off the couch, and I didn't know how to be a dad, so I'm like, that's more of an excuse,
Mm-hmm.
So I used that, and the guilt and the shame, it's like my family had seen a version of their son for those 10, 11 months. They haven't seen since he was 14, 15 years old. And I started to build those relationships back. And I started to show up when I would tell my dad, like, yeah, I'll be there to help you clean out the gutters. Oh, mom needs picked up. I'll give mom a ride. And I'm showing up. And it's like life crumbled within that first hour of being awake after the relapse. And everything they said in treatment was true. When you relapse, you pick up right where you left off. And I thought that was bullcrap, man, because I'm like, there's no way. Like, I was so down bad when I went to jail. Like, there's no way. It gets worse. And, you know, like, everything they say is like all those things, the cliche things, is like, I lived a true experience of those to know for a fact that I am no different and I am no better than anybody else. And, yeah, so from there, you know, I used the whole 9 months she was pregnant, in and out of, and not really around. Daughter's born. First time I'm holding her in the hospital, is like both family on sides, like my family on this side, daughter's mom's family. I'm holding my daughter and I start to nod out and I catch myself and I look around and no one says anything. And my brain and disease says, they didn't see it. You got this. You know, like they have no idea. And I believed it, man. And I started getting calls from people in the treatment facility, like, or that I was in treatment with that are still sober. And I'm getting calls from people that are running the streets that I've been using with. And they're like, hey, congrats, man. Can we come see your daughter? And all the people in recovery, I'm like, nah, you got to wait till I come home. You know, wait till she gets home. All the people I'm using with, I'm like, yeah, you can come see her if you bring me something. Like, it wasn't even about the baby. God had blessed me with this beautiful little girl. And I'm like, if you bring me something, then you can come see this little girl. And, you know, from there, like that first 9 months she was born, I was never really around. Like I was staying at the house, the same house. I was just always ripping and running the streets. When I popped home, it'd be for like an hour to take a shower or like sleep, or because I ran out of money and I was like scheming. Yeah, and then I ended up homeless. You know, I remember I got kicked out because I got caught. It's like the girl I was with knew it was just she didn't want to accept it. You know, it's like such a hard thing for people that you love, for them to see and accept. Like, man, this is true. And yeah, so I ended up homeless and burned all the bridges, you know, in that 9 months. Mom, dad, I came from that loving household, and I'd call them and say, can I please sleep on your couch? Can I please take a shower? Can I please have $20? And they're saying no. And in the moment, I really felt like no one loved me as far as family, you know, and like everyone that says they love me, I'm like, no, you don't, because you won't give me $20. You won't let me sleep on your couch. But what they were doing was they stopped enabling me, because if they did those things, I would have been dead.
Yeah.
You know, they would have found me dead on their couch. Yeah. So the last straw, you know, I prayed to God. I said, if I have purpose, put me in jail. And I never prayed to go to jail. I always prayed to get out. You know, I'm like, God, get me out of jail. I'll do whatever. Prayed to go to jail. I said, give me the courage to go to jail, or, you know, put me in jail, or give me the courage to commit suicide. Because I was suicidal at that point. Because I'm like, no one, I have no one around. No one cares about me. You know, like no one is like showing me love and affection to the extent of what I think they should. And I just felt so alone, you know? And yeah, I ended up in jail. That's what began the journey of this sobriety now. So
it's incredible, especially like, you know, to kind of have that, like that cry answered out, especially at a time of like so much hopelessness and kind of despair, to kind of like, hey, kind of got you on the path and things aligned there, man.
Yeah.
So for you, man, like what's been that big driving force for you in this journey that's really helped you this be different than times before?
Yeah, I'd say like the main driving force is I have responsibilities now. You know, I have 2 kids. You know, it's like my daughter, that was the main responsibility and like thing that really kept me from committing suicide, because I grew up with a dad, you know, a present dad that loved and cared. And that's when I really realized that I took that for granted as a kid. You know, my dad was always there, loving and kind, and was the best dad he could be. You know, like he would work 3 or 4 jobs just so we didn't have to cut the electric off, you know, and we're still eating like cans of Spam. That's what we ate. and or Vienna sausages. You know, it's like they were like 25 cents a can back in the day. So, but yeah, so it's like that. What really drove me to was I can't commit suicide, and I have to get sober, because if I die, my daughter grows up and says, "Who was my dad? What kind of person was my dad?" That was something that really kept me from going ending it. And then when I got sober, it's like I came home from treatment, tables turn, 180 degrees. I'm a full-time dad. 30 days, 40 days sober. I have this 9-month-old, 10-month-old girl every single day, and taking her to meetings with me, taking her to, it was like my road dog, you know. It was like we went to meetings, we're hanging out at sober living houses, we're going to church, we're volunteering in the community, hitting all these fireworks in AAA baseball games, and every carnival within 50 miles, because that's what she loved to do, and I'm sober, you know. And it's like, yeah, man, that first year of sobriety was amazing, you know. And that's what really taught me how to be a dad, was the people in the rooms, because I had no idea how hot the bath water is supposed to be, you know, to give this little 10-month-old girl a bath. How much, you know, I didn't learn any of those things because I wasn't around. Yeah. You know, so that was the real driving force, you know. It's responsibility, true responsibility, because I didn't care if I had anything for myself, you know. It's just hey, I'm hurting myself, none of you guys. You know, but I had that real responsibility. And then building a relationship with God, you know, that was the main key thing that I learned this time around in treatment, was building that relationship with God. And that's what really got me through. The first 4 months, I had a lot of spiritual experiences, being home from treatment, not working and stuff, just taking it slow, go to meetings. I would pray and ask God, you know, God, I need an opportunity to make this $120 a legal way, you know, illegal, because I know how to make money illegally. I did that. That's what everyone does around the neighborhood. It's you know.
Yeah.
So I pray and ask God, give me an opportunity to make this exact amount, $120, so I can pay my phone bill, and so I can buy some food and this and that for you know. And within 15 seconds of saying amen, my phone would ring. It'd be someone from the program, my buddy Randy, and he's like, "Hey, you want to help me do this deck today? It's resurfacing, staining, and this and that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't want to be weird or anything, but how much am I going to get paid?" $120 cash, the exact amount.
Right.
So it's okay, God, you know, I see that if I pray and I'm willing, you're going to provide these opportunities. And then from there, you know, it's really just a lot of different things that factored into it. Yeah, man, it really just be you know, everything they say, putting yourself in the middle of the bed, you know, volunteering, just doing the next right thing. It's crazy. So simple.
Yeah.
But yet so difficult.
Right.
So, and we talked a little bit offline, Kenny. I mean, you see, you were doing a lot of service work, like you said, in sober houses. Were you speaking at hospitals and visiting patients in detox and stuff like that, or no?
Yeah, so I would go to the first 2 years of sobriety. I went back to the treatment facility that I got sober at.
Yeah.
I went there once a
Okay.
month. It was in Warren, and I would just take tons. I remember because it was it's an hour away from my house, and my family wasn't ready to come see me yet, you know. So I'd take a bunch of ramen noodles and chips and stuff, and I'd go hang out with them and speak and do an H&I, and then I did that for the first 2 years.
Nice.
Because your journey is incredible to me, you know, from watching the video that you sent me. I mean, one, they did a story on you, you know, that got a lot of attention because of the work that you're doing in the community. But the other thing too is, I mean, you've spoken, you know, at graduations, you've spoken at companies. I mentioned earlier, you've spoken at a TED Talk just recently. You got your shop in Akron, Ohio, you know,
Yeah.
with the T-shirts and the motivational quotes and things like that. And part of the proceeds, you're reinvesting in the community. We talked about, you know, the building and, you know, where you're going to have meetings and Bible studies and things. I mean, you're all into your recovery. You're trying to make your community better. You're trying to be a beacon of hope, beacon of inspiration. You're trying to help people get on the right path. and I respect you for that. But just talk a little bit about what was the evolution there, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, so I'd say like really like the evolution is like anything I've always done, I've always been like all in. You know, baseball, all in, skateboarding, all in. Um, and when I got sober, is like I realized like I had taken so much from the community, I had hurt so many people. Um, I wanted to do something different. You know, I wanted to just try to inspire change and make the community a better place.
Yeah.
But as simple as like giving someone a ride or like paying for someone's gas, whatever, like $5 on someone's gas, like when they're only putting $2 in there, that's like a huge thing. There's little things like that, but really just trying to, I don't know, like to change the world in a way that my daughter would not grow up and see the way that she could have grew up. And for all the kids in the neighborhood too, because there's a lot of kids here. I'd say every kid that comes to the store, I know one kid that has a dad. I'm talking like tons of kids that come to the store, you know?
Yeah.
And, to be a positive influence and show them like there's another way of living, whether it's like in sobriety or not, like just morals and the things that were
Sure.
instilled as me as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So it's just to try to inspire people to like, the world isn't as bad as it seems, It's like a mindset. You try to like be the best and make the best of it.
100%. I mean, just like do the next right thing. And when you're going through a challenging time in life, slow down those thoughts and ask yourself what's the positive that can be taken out of it and what's the learning experience here, right?
Yeah. And then it's like
You
the thing
know?
is, man, I love what I do, I really, really enjoy and love you know, one like create and design clothes. That's just like a thing that's always been like I've loved to do that, because it's like apparel with purpose, like all the merchandise and the designs mean something. When people wear them, they feel like empowered, they feel hope. um but like talking to the strangers that come into the store, homeless people that are, I've given countless people rides to treatment and stuff. I even let someone live in the storefront, actually. And I didn't even know this dude. I knew him for like 2 months. He did 8 years in prison. And that's like not to like brag or like say anything like that. I'm not that type of person. But just to show like how God has truly changed my life, and that I believe certain people that he sends in my path are sent for a reason. And it's like this dude's like killing it now and he's doing great, It's because someone gave him an opportunity.
Right.
Um and it's just I feel like I have purpose today. I feel like I have purpose to love people from where they're at, inspire people that it is possible. All the achievements and stuff I could, that's just like the icing on the cake. It's like a bonus. Um, but really, it's like a cool thing because it's like I hate the ego. I hate the attention as far as like when I'm out in public, people are weird and stuff like that. It's just like, hey, I'm the same as you. I just like I think those things are really cool because it's like someone who's struggling with mental health, addiction, homeless. Like they can see like it is possible.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's like I said. I mean, you feel so hopeless when you're in your depths of addiction. You just need that little spark of inspiration. You need a little spark of hope.
yeah,
I think I told you. I mean, after my overdose, and Justin knows the story, and I was sent down to the psychiatric unit, I was just going through the motions and was just trying to be a good soldier, if you will, to do as minimal amount of time as possible in the psychiatric unit, just to go home, do more drinking, do more drugs, and probably die because I really didn't see any way out of it. And on the third day I'm down there, this dude comes in that had a 17-year battle with heroin, and he's living a life of recovery, living a life of service. He's a functional member of society. He's on his lunch break. He's dressed nice. He smells nice. And he starts telling his story. And I'm like, this can't be the same guy.
yeah,
But it's the same guy. And as crazy as my story was, I always make a joke about it. My story was like Disney World compared to his story. Yet here he is. And my thought process was, well, hell, if he can do it, I can do it. There is a way out. And I remember talking to him afterwards, and yes, I was in treatment, and yes, I would take little bits and pieces of what they would say and kind of ad lib and have little stretches of sobriety. And then what would happen is you'd slip up. Inevitably, you'd slip up and relapse. And that's what happened to me. And that dude told me straight up, man. He goes, "It's not a dictatorship." He goes, "But it kind of is a dictatorship. You got to do it exactly how I tell you to do because I know how to get out of it." And at that point, I was just like, you know what? The dude's got street cred. He knows how to get out of it. He had a tremendous battle. Whatever that man says to do, I'm going to do. And I did. And lo and behold, I'm here today. And I don't think I would be here if that gentleman did not speak. And that third day I was down in psychiatric unit after my last overdose. I really don't think so. I mean, the hope and inspiration that he provided, it it gave me a ray of light that I didn't feel for years and years and years. And that's why when you start doing the life of service, and you start talking to these individuals on the streets, or when they come to the shop, or when you're doing a presentation in a hospital, it's so important. Because I always think about that gentleman. That's why I do what I do. I know that's why you do what you do, because you just need to be that little ray of light. They need to understand that there's a way out, and then completely turn their life around. I mean, in program, I've seen so many miracles. I know you've seen so many miracles as well. You probably work with people that you help get sober that are miracles, and it just makes you feel so good on the inside. So our stories are very, very different, but there's also a lot of similarities too in regards to the whole purpose and the spirituality thing and our drug of choice. I mean, I could totally relate to a lot of the stuff that you said, man. Do you want to talk a little bit about your shop and the apparel with the purpose and what you do in the community, and maybe talk a little about, your experiences with, the presentations, specifically the TED Talks that you just did on Sunday?
Yeah. So, like the storefront, it's a great place. It's crazy how I ended up at that location because it's not what I visualized it to be. On the same boulevard I was homeless on. When I got the place, it was abandoned for 10 years. No lights, no electric, nothing. No, it was all gutted. It was a meth den. People smoke meth in it and cook meth in it. So I got this place, remodeled it with the community showed up and we all remodeled it, got it all, ready for a grand opening, opened it up. And it's full of different murals from different artists in the community. It's like a real cool like streetwear vibe, like I've never experienced or been in another store that is anything similar, like even just looks. But there is definitely some awesome stuff that goes on, man. So like I get to create and design clothes, faith-based, recovery-based, community-based designs, collab with different artists. Uh, I've got to do some cool designs and collaborations like Goodyear, like the Goodyear tire company that's like worldwide or whatever. So like those, and then yeah, man, and then just like even like the simplest cool collabs with like sixth grade kids. I go in, teach a sixth grade class in the neighborhood. All the kids work together to build a design. They come take a field trip down to the store once a year, and we actually screen print the design. They can see how the shirt is made. They all get a shirt, and those are cool, because it gives kids hope. It helps spark their brain and gives them inspiration and ideas. Uh, so yeah, the store's coming up on 4 years open. In March, it'll be 4 years. I've seen tons of miracles. Um, I remember the one that was like the first or second year. We were in the store. It was a cold winter night, dark outside. This lady comes in. She's in the program with her friend, and it's someone's mom, And she's like, "Hey, like, have you seen my son? He's homeless. He's been in Kenmore." And I'm like, "I don't know. Can you show me a picture?" She shows me a picture. I'm like, "I've never seen the dude before." She's like, "Yeah, he's been homeless for like 6 months. He's really bad, strung out." I'm like, "Well, what we can do is pray for him. We can pray for him right now." And I turn around to grab her hands and pray. And she drops everything she has and says, "That's him." I'm like, "What?" And he's standing right outside the storefront. And he actually went to treatment from there and he's been sober. He just stopped in like 2 weeks ago. He's been sober now for, like a little over 2 years. So it's like from that moment, it's like those things is like, that's a miracle, you know?
Oh,
Um, So, and then we do different events, every month I try to host a community giveaway or like, just a community event that inspires change, brings everyone together. We give stuff away to kids. We do back to school giveaways. We do Easter, trunk or treat, Christmas present giveaway. Yeah, man, it's just, we host a sober support mental health meeting every Friday. It's a lot going on. It's like the craziest thing every day. Some days I don't understand like how I get, I do these things, it's like so much different things. And I'm like, I'm like on a million different directions but that's how I operate and I thrive, it's, just, I guess my brain's wired that way. But yeah, so we do the sober support mental health meeting every Friday. It's grown from 20 people. We're coming up on the 3-year anniversary for that meeting. December 10th is the anniversary. 15 people now to 150 people every Friday. Wow. And it's a great thing. We got like a great support group, a great group of people that come in. And just like any other meeting, it's like seasons. Some people come, they love it, they thrive, they stick around for 6 months, and they find another meeting they like, And that's what I've been focusing on lately is really just embracing the moment of whatever and whoever's in my moment, like whatever, because it's like you never know who's going to be gone tomorrow, and you never know. Like I've lost too many people to like take that for granted,
Yeah.
And it's like I want to be present. I want to spend time and enjoy, because it's like who knows? I might not ever see you again, or like I might see you again for the next 6 months, and then or whatever, maybe the next 6 years or whatever. But just be grateful, So, yeah. Does that answer the questions?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I appreciate you sharing all that stuff. It's like, I think when you come out of addiction and, you have those near-death experiences, or in your case, it sounded to me like you were dead, for a period of time before you were able to be revived. When you come out on the other side, you look at life completely different. I mean, you got a completely different perspective on things. I know I am a completely different individual. I live in the present. I actually view that, when I wake up in the morning, it's actually a gift. I used to take things for granted. I used to be materialistic. I'm judgmental.
Yeah.
Now I've completely changed. I'm not the same person at all. And when I haven't seen people in an extended period of time, and I bump into them every now and then, and all they know me as a drug addict and alcoholic that was an executive in the insurance industry that was fat and bloated. And they look at me now, I'm physically fit, I eat clean, I'm sober, and I'm a completely different person. It's almost sometimes like they're looking at a ghost. Like they don't even recognize the person.
Right.
Like they can't fathom this is the same person. And I'm sure you probably had many of those experiences as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And it, kind of makes you feel a little weird on the inside, doesn't it? When people get,
Yeah,
because
for sure.
you're the same person, but you kind of understand where they're coming from, though, too. Especially if they saw you in your darkest hour, and now you're living in recovery, and you've completely changed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I got one question, and I guess I probably would end it on this, unless you got an additional question, Justin. I just thought about this off the cuff. So you're a father now, okay? And you got. I know you got a daughter. You got 2 daughters. You got a daughter and a son, or
Yeah,
how
I
about
got a
you,
daughter,
Kenny?
and then yeah. Then a 5-month-old son.
Okay, so we use the son. It's comparable. Your son's 15 years old. In that environment, in that high school, they found out that he never drank, never smoked, and they're planning a party to get him drunk for the first time. What would your advice be to that kid?
To my kid?
Any kid out there that's feeling that
Oh
peer
yeah, any
pressure, but
kid. Yeah, I would
yeah,
say like if I could give advice to any kid out there, um, man, that is a really good question because it's
it's
like
a tough one. But I mean, it's realistic. I mean, obviously
yeah,
you lived it, and
it
as
is.
teenagers, they feel the peer pressure every day.
Yeah, so it's like all the I've given advice to these kids, like in the neighborhood and stuff. The same scenario kind of, but I would tell them, I'll just share my story with a man and just tell them all the bad stuff that's happened, and then ask them if they're ready to experience that for themselves.
Right.
Do you want to see your life go this way, or do you want to see your life go this way? Everything that's happened in sobriety, and I think that would be a better advice to that kid than telling them don't do it, da 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 da. Because that's what happened to me when I was a kid. Like, oh, don't drink, don't smoke. Or like people would say, like, oh,
just say no.
Yeah. Just say no. Yeah. But it's like I never really. If someone would have told me like their experience, and it was like someone that I could relate to, not like a stickler. Like it was someone that I could relate to, and like, oh, like you are cool. Then I would have listened to him more prone. I feel like I would have, but I still probably would have. Man, everyone makes that choice. And
I think there's power in the story.
Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
I was just gonna say, I just think there's power in the story because I'm pretty open and transparent about my opiate addiction started, which it started really instantly with the doctor prescribing pain pills, and it just escalated. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people tell me, yeah, I was at a doctor and doctor prescribed Norcos, and I had a procedure done or what have you, and I didn't even get the prescription filled because all I kept thinking about was your story, Mark. I mean, I've heard that many, many times, or I took him for a couple of days and I kind of liked the feeling, and I got a little scared because I thought about your story and everything that you went through, Mark. So I think there's definitely power in the story, sharing those experiences, whether it be kids, young adults, our age, whatever it might be. Because I think that society in general has, and I don't mean this in a negative sense, but I mean there's an ignorance there. There's a lack of education there when it comes to mental health, and there's certainly a lack of education when it comes to alcohol and substance use disorder. Still to this day, I mean, I know we've come a long ways, but we have such a long way to go. As a country, to stop the stigma, stop the shame, stop the guilt, get people to to understand that it truly is a disease. We got we got a long way to go as a society, in my opinion. But we need more people like you, to spread the word. I respect the hell out of you with all the work that you're doing in the community. If you're willing and you want to, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on social media and that?
Yeah, social media would be just a dad from Akron, for the business. Really, it's just like the business and like life. It's all like one big thing, like it's like a lifestyle. I literally live it. It's kind of like I work 24/7, kind of.
Yeah.
But Kenny Lambert on Facebook, storefront, 937 Kenmore Boulevard, Akron, Ohio, and website justadadfromakron.com. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
And let me just share, like, man, I think your story.
No, it's you. I'm going to have you close. It's all you now. I've been talking too much.
This is incredible to hear Mark tonight. Like, usually it's roles reversed.
So normally when we have a guest, normally
kicks in, and I'm like, man, like my mind's really spinning. But yeah, like honestly, like when you answer that question about like what would you tell that kid? Because like that's like a really tough spot to be in, man. And because like you nailed it. Like you tell me not to do something, watch. I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah, that might not have worked for you, but I'm not you. Yeah. So watch it work. And I think that's key because I think your story really highlighted, man, early on, especially when you're kind of talking about what it was like that you were kind of sitting there with internally, and like those inner battles that maybe people on the outside weren't too privy to or aware of where you were actually at, right? And it always comes back. And like I've heard Chris Herron speak a couple times, like in person, and I think he hits it on the head. And like he said it, and like this was like one of my first times, like when I got in the field, I'm like, yes, you got it, man. Like, what is it about you that you're not okay with? Like, why can't you sit there and just be you in those moments that you're looking for some like escape route? And I think that's really kind of echoed with me and my own personal journey. I kind of heard it in yours where it's just like, I'm just trying to solve the problem of being me. And I've just found this great escape. And this is the solution of this, right? And so I think that honesty with people, instead of trying to moralize them into kind of making a choice, is so powerful and so important. I think that's the power in like your story, in Marc's story. It just kind of resonates. It hits home, and it's delivered in a way. It's like, oh, all we're looking for at the end of the day is something that inspires and delivers meaning and hope. And I think that's kind of in the work you're doing, man. That's so powerful, is that you're giving people a taste of that. Because, I mean, we're in your darkest day, my darkest day, it's always just like, what's the point? Like, what's the purpose? You get to that point, you talk about reality, and it's just like, well, if I don't wake up tomorrow, so be it. I just don't wake up. It's been a nice run. Yeah. I'm out. Instead of now being to the point where it's like, look at this gift that today is offering me. And I now have the ability to go make an impact on somebody's life in such a meaningful and powerful way and connect with people, as opposed to kind of like isolate myself on my little island where I'm just surrounded by the things in my own head that I just want to get away from. And so dude, that's so powerful. And I just appreciate you taking time to be here with us tonight. Marc taking the lead and rocking it. The world's been asking to hear his voice, and boy, did they hear his voice tonight. So
there you go.
Appreciate you joining and participating in this. Like, we love these opportunities because, you know, we have the opportunity to kind of connect and share and reach out and spread information, because that's what it's all about in these discussions. And our podcasts air on the 15th and the 30th of each month. So be sure to tune in. They're available on Apple, YouTube, whatever you like to get your podcast on, it will be there. So Marc and me are open to comments, suggestions, any feedback, topics you want to see us tackle. We can be reached at namidupage.org/podcast, and we will make sure to take that into consideration for our future episodes here. And so, as always, again, Kenny, it's been a pleasure, man, and a joy to kind of hear you and, you know, witness your story here that you've shared with us this evening. So thank you for all that you're doing and continuing to do, man. And Marc, for being the wingman, taking the wheel today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining us today on Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. If you're on the journey to find guidance and insights, subscribe now wherever you find your podcasts. Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery is an educational resource, not a substitute for medical or therapeutic advice. The opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are not necessarily those of NAMI DuPage. Go to namidupage.org/podcast for links to past episodes, show notes, and to submit a question or topic ideas for a future episode. Until next time, be well.